Mike Iddings, and I am the host of the YouTube channel Getmybuckle. This channel is all about the buckle and all about getting the first timer across the finish line in under 12 hours. Our guest today is a pretty famous cyclist. I'll give you a couple hints, see if you can guess. 1984 Olympic team member in cycling. 1986, the first team in the American team in the Tour de France, a racer. 1992, the Olympic coach for cycling. 99, Velo News Coach of the Year. 99, USA Cycling Coach of the Year. Any guesses? 2003, US Bicycling Hall of Fame inductee. 2004, USA Cycling Lifetime Achievement Award. And the pinnacle of his career, 2006, the Leadville Trail 100. Our guest today, Mr. Chris Carmichael himself. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. How you doing?
Good. Well, I know you've done the Leadville Trail 100 several times. Today on the show, we would like to hear about your experience. You know, how did you get to the point where you put your name in the hat? Would be one question. What was your process from I'm in to the starting line? And then, you know, share your day with us, share your race day with us.
Sure.
So,
let's see. I registered for the Leadville Trail 100 in 1997, actually the first time, and I wasn't able to attend. I was the coaching director for the U.S. cycling team at the time, and I got in, and lo and behold, you know, unfortunately, there was an overlap with the track world championships in Perth, Australia. And so I wasn't able to attend, but it had sparked my interest for a while. I heard, you know, mountain bikers living in Colorado talk about it in the 90s. And it was like, wow, that sounds really cool. You know, at that point, 100 miles on a mountain bike was not very normal, you know, and so kind of always wanted to do it. Fast forward the early, you know, kind of mid 2000s, we had after the 2005 Tour de France came back, Lance Armstrong had announced his retirement. And we had to get together at CTS, kind of celebrating Lance's victory and with all the CTS coaches and staff and everything. And I heard some of the coaches talking about they were going to the Leadville 100, and I was like, you know, I'm going to do that next year. And everybody was sort of like, dude, you're fat and out of shape, you know, and
imagine that.
And well, at that point, I was probably 20 pounds heavier, you know, and wasn't riding my bike that much. And the head of our sports science division was this guy, JT Kearney, and he was a big guy. He was a rower. He was on the 84 Olympic team for rowing. And he loved mountain biking, and he had done the Leadville Trail 100. I think he was coming up on his 10th year for doing it, you know, so he was going to get the real big buckle. And you know, everybody's kind of making fun of me. I go, I'm going to do it, you know, and I asked JT, what do you do? You know, what's your time? And he's like, well, I get under 12 every time, you know? And I'm like, well, you know, I'm going to go under 9. And he said, no way. And kind of laughed. And I said, look, I'll bet you $1,000 I go under 9, you know? And so took that bet on. I lost that bet. I think I finished with a 9:18. And so I had to pay JT his money, but then I came back and the next year my front rotor came off and I did like a 9:05, and the third year I went 8:40 or something like that, so I did go under. I think the next year I also was under 9 hours, and did a couple more years, but it was a great. I loved it. It was awesome event.
Oh, for sure. Did you owe him for the second time you didn't do sub 9?
No, I didn't bet anymore.
He
I
didn't
learned my
double down on
lesson.
that one?
I lost $1,000 on that first one, and I remember, for whatever reason, I was kind of traveling a lot, and I didn't actually ride the mountain. I think I mountain biked maybe 3 or 4 times before the race, primarily just road ride. And I remember my skills were getting better as the race was going on, and I was like, man, I got to ride this thing more. And um, so it was a great event. I love it. Yeah.
So did you, so you got the email saying you're in. Did you, I mean, were you, that when you finished, were you, I mean, did you have to start from zero, or were you already, kind of in shape? I mean, where were you when you got that email, fitness wise?
You know, I fortunate. I went from probably 2000 to 2005. I didn't ride my bike that much, and like I said, I gained. I'm normally about 175 pounds. I'm back. I'm 64 now, so that was a while ago. I was probably 100 and I was probably I was 20 pounds heavier. So, but I obviously was an athlete for a long time. And so, I just started training and started working myself back into shape, and did all the things necessary, just tried to do the simple things first, and from an eating standpoint, in order to lose some weight. When I say the simple things, it's like, cut out alcohol at night, don't put butter on the bread, don't, and then, a month later, cut out desserts, and just do those simple things that eliminate the unnecessary calories that there's no really nutritional value by drinking, a beer or a glass of wine. And so right there, a glass of wine is probably 90 calories, get rid of a glass of wine. And if it's just one glass, you're getting rid of 90 calories. Two glasses, obviously 180 calories. So, pretty easy to start doing the math, and you start creating a caloric deficit, and the weight starts coming off. So I got down to a pretty decent weight, obviously not like when I was a pro athlete, but, for,
Right.
kind of just an enthusiast. But I focused on that. I focused on increasing my training volume. I was fortunate, living in Colorado Springs. I was already at altitude, which was good. Not
Right.
real high altitude, but still 6,000 feet. And I was surrounded by a lot of our coaching staff, which was very young. And so they would go out and ride, and I would jump in the rides with them, both mountain bike and road. And I, just trying to hang on, slowly got me, back into pretty decent shape. For most people that are really kind of the first year they're going to Leadville, it's really daunting, and there's so much that you've got to, that can overwhelm you. You think about, how am I going to eat out there, and then you think about the training, and you think about, yeah, about losing some weight going into it. You've got 10,000 feet of climbing, during the race, so there's a lot. It all feels like you got to kind of do everything all at once. That's a big mistake that people make. I think it's breaking it down and going, okay, what are the first steps, and the first steps is obviously training is one of the first things, and making sure that, and for a lot of people, if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, for example, you just can't deal with altitude, I mean, you don't have a choice. And so you can lament how there's no altitude, or you can focus on the things that you can control. And that's really important, is to focus on the things that you can control. So making sure that your training is something that you can control. So setting up your schedule is really critical, and you also, for most people, they've got, a work life, they've got a family life. So you can't do this in a silo. You have to bring everybody in, bring in, tell the people you're working with, tell your boss, hey, and really try to get them bought into it, and come in with a plan and say, hey, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, can I cut off a little early so I can get out and do some riding, on, as it's starting to warm up in April or something, and cut off, bring your family in, and make sure they're part of it as well, and get your kids engaged in you achieving this goal. And maybe it turns in, as you see in Leadville, it's really a family affair. You got campers out there, you got little kids, everybody is kind of part of it. And so get the family engaged, and get them bought into it, and then, and slowly build out your training, and initially, if you're doing most of your training indoors, as soon as you learn that you're able to, don't put off training, don't put off and go, I'll wait till it starts warming up. Get on the indoor bike, get on your trainer. There's plenty of different opportunities for indoor training now that are all legitimate, and so lay out and start making a good plan of attack. And then as it starts warming up, start looking to slowly increase your training volume. That's the amount of time that you're spending out on the bike, especially on the weekends. That's where, and I would say initially looking for one long ride a week on the weekend. And then the rest of the days, maybe there's 1-2 days that are, I would say, more the intensity days. If you don't have much time to train, those would be days that you would want to focus on building up your sort of functional threshold power, or working on your VO2 max. Those are two kind of key things that you need to be working on. Two key energy systems that you need to be working on to get ready for Leadville. And so you really have 3 days a week you're training. Everything else you can ride, but it's not really considered training. It's kind of recovery rides, and because it's on your hard days of training or your long days, and it's either the intensity or the volume. But the days in between, that's when you recover. And recover means you adapt. You get stronger, you get faster, you get more powerful. And if every day is the same, every day is hard, there's no adaptation. You're just going to slowly break down and actually start to get worse. So lay out a plan, and there's, plenty of great training books out there. There's all kinds of coaches and groups out there to help guide you. But it's really 2 to 3 days a week are legitimate training rides. Everything else is kind of filler, so to speak, and recovery. Then you got to look at your diet. If you need to lose some weight, power to weight is really critical for a race like Leadville. It's kind of a small person sport, by and large. So, so dropping some lbs helps, And so, like I say, take those first steps of cutting out the things that are the easy calories to lose. That, everybody wants to, should I eat, less carbs, eat more protein? Should I eat less protein? And, it's like, do the easy things first. Cut out the alcohol, cut out the desserts, cut out the calorically dense things, the butter, fats, things like that are really calorically dense, that don't, not all fat, but cut those out. And then, I would say, make it pretty simple. It's like you need carbohydrate to fuel you. That's your fuel of choice if you're a bike racer. If you're an ultra runner or something else, you may have more of a mix. But if you're a bike racer, you need carbs. You're not going to get up the climbs. That's just because in order to meet the demands of the event, carbohydrate converts very quickly to energy. Just a few steps, it converts to energy. Fat takes much longer to convert to energy, has a lot more calories, but it converts to energy very quickly. So carbohydrates the kind of the fuel of choice when you're out there. And so when you're out there, you also have to train yourself to eat like you're going to do in the race. So you should try to put together, as you can start to get more sophisticated about this, you can start to determine basically at various intensity levels how many calories you're burning in an hour, and then you can make a forecast of how many calories you're going to go through during the course of 10 hours, let's say, in Leadville. And knowing that you start with a full tank of stored carbohydrate. Everybody's a little different, the size, and stored, and also blood glucose. For a guy like me, it's probably about 2,000 calories of stored carbohydrate, and then about roughly 1,000 calories of blood glucose, probably a little less, and you can start to forecast. There's going to be a decline. What you want to do is keep that decline as you're eating. That's going to mean that decline is not as sharp as if you're not eating.
You're keeping the tank topped off.
Absolutely. Keep it topped off.
So let me take a second here for a couple bullet points that I heard, and I want the first timers to be, make sure that they heard them as well. Starting out, diet. Cut out the useless calories. And, start small, work your way into it, power to weight. That's what you're going to work on. Get your plan, perfect time, call CTS. Chris said that he would waive the coaching registration fee for any athletes that come on board now through this show to get to hire a CTS coach to get them through the Leadville Trail 100. Get your family involved, because it takes a village to get your buckle. That's for sure. It takes a village. And then make sure you had stored carbs when you get to the race. So those are some bullet points that I heard. I just want to make sure you guys picked up on them as well, but we'll let Chris continue. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think, it's not a very technical course, I would say, for, you're not really going to have to worry about. Well, I mean, it depends upon your skill level, but obviously you need to be getting out there and make sure that you've got, sound mountain bike skills, that you can handle, rocky, loose descents. That's, something that you have to cope with when you're out there. So, working on those is critical. Getting in some long rides, getting some time in on your bike at relatively low, moderate intensity. It's kind of the rule thumb I like to say is the longer you go, the easier you go. The shorter the rides, when you're getting off work and you've got an hour and a half to ride, you can use it pretty effectively. But, one or two hard workouts in the week, and then one long one on the weekend. You can modify that a little bit as things start to warm up, maybe where you are, and you could do, one intense workout during the week and then two long rides on the weekend, but they should be moderate, easy, moderate paced rides. The new catchphrase of everything is zone 2. And, there's nothing magical about it. It's just, when you're out there riding like that, you just can't keep that intensity up. Like if you're doing a shorter ride with a lot more intervals and you're working on your VO2 system, if you're doing, 18 minutes total of VO2 max work, that's a lot, that will basically, you've probably got another hour of riding in you, and you're done. And that's about an hour and a half total,
And that 18 minutes, is that in a day or is it a week?
that's one workout,
One
but
workout.
broken up into intervals,
Right.
that could be 6 3-minute intervals, you know, uh, there's all kinds of of VO2 max workouts. Uh, it's important energy. It's important. It's not an energy system, but it's an important determinant of performance that you need to keep sharp.
And
It's not something that you need to be doing every week, but at periods during your training plan, you need to be including some of that. Also, some threshold work. Start a lower intensity, what they call sweet spot, sort of, or aerobic threshold. Just as you're starting to accumulate some of um, uh, that lactate, but you can keep going for an hour, hour and a half or so at that pace. That's really good because that's probably pretty close to what you're going to be riding at most of the time in Leadville. So doing some bouts of that type of work, also doing some little higher intensity, what we call lactate threshold or climbing repeats, where you're at that what we call that threshold where your body's going from using carbohydrate and fat as your fuel source to using primarily just carbohydrate as that fuel source, right at that threshold. And so what happens, and let's say that, for a guy like Mike, that happens at about 350 watts. So, we do repeated bouts at, 10, 12-minute intervals at 350 watts. And you might do 3 or 4 of those 12-minute intervals. And slowly, what we start to see is it's no longer at 350 watts. It's now at 360, 370 watts, getting a 10, 15% jump in your power at lactate threshold should be expected.
and what is when you talk about the long rides, what would your definition of a long ride be?
That's a good question. You have to look at it also with the the conditions you're riding in. Is it flat, hilly, all sorts of things like that, come into play. I don't really feel like you necessarily need to reproduce the, if you're saying you're going to go out and ride, you're going to do Leadville in 10 hours, you have to do a 10-hour ride. Not necessarily a bad thing sometimes for people to, if you've never done anything like that, to do that, to know that, hey, you can sit your butt on the saddle for 10 hours,
Right. Mm-hmm.
important thing. But long rides, basically between 4 to 6 hours is generally what I would caution most people to do. And when they're doing their long rides, when you're caught up in the rest of it, and then periodically doing some longer ones, a 7 or 8 hour day, fine, but don't feel like, and maybe you do a 10-hour day, and that's something that just knowing you can do. But the question is not, you have to remember, it's not who can ride the bike the longest. It's who can be able to go the length of the race in under 12 hours to get an official time. So for a lot of people, it's being able to go fast enough to be able to go under 12 hours. So that's a combination of working that energy system, lactate threshold, your aerobic threshold, being able to lower your power to weight ratio, increase your power to weight ratio, being able to do long, easy, moderate pace rides where you're eating like you're doing in the race.
Eating.
Eating,
Right.
because we train our gut as we eat, and you also train to be able to take in more carbohydrate at the beginning. It can create problems. You need to also do the things like make sure if you're going to be using a, hydration pack, that you're doing these rides with a hydration pack.
Right.
If you're taking in a fair amount of carbohydrate when you're out on the bike, make sure that you follow up with some fluid to help move that out of your gut, that carbohydrate out of your gut, and get to the working muscles. That helps so it doesn't get all tied up in a bulbous feeling in your gut. Other things are the aid stations. Look at your aid stations and have a plan for your aid stations. Who's going to be there feeding you? Are you going to get off your bike? I recommend not get off the bike. Those aid stations, I see people get off the bike, they sit down. It's so hard to get back on and get going.
Right.
Stay on
Yeah.
the bike, have your kids, your family practice this stuff. Fill your pockets, get rid of the wrappers that are in your pockets or in your hydration pack. Fill them back up, and when you're there, make sure you're drinking and eating. As all this is going on, you shouldn't just be talking. You should be drinking and eating, because this is time you can get a lot more calories in without having to reach back and fumble around and try to take in your calories. So make sure when you're at the aid stations, you're drinking, you're eating, you've got a plan. Don't get off the bike, straddle the bike. Don't sit, unless you have some really, some like a health issue or something, a real problem. Don't sit, because it's going to be a lot harder to get back up, and you're going to sit longer than you think.
Right.
Always end up sitting a lot longer than you think.
Yeah, and this is this is like a NASCAR pit stop. This is not a a Saturday ride with the boys stop. This is a NASCAR pit stop.
Yep.
In, out, gone, back on the bike. And before we get too far down the course or down the journey, I was lucky enough to have you as my coach for a couple years with great experience. Thank you. But regarding when you were talking about the different systems and the training, I just want to make a comment. You are inching up. You are not cramming for this test. Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. That's a mistake everybody makes, is that, they get in and they immediately, it's like out of the blocks, everything changes, and it's like
Go.
one step at a time, be really, these incremental steps. And because it's really, your body has to adapt to these changes, and, training, changing in your diet, all that sort of stuff. It takes time to adapt. And that adaptation is what you're looking for, and that's really your measurement, and to see if you're doing well. But it takes time. It's not something you're going to notice, from one workout to the next. It just, doesn't. Sometimes it can happen like that, but for most people, it's not one workout to the next. It's these small incremental steps that you're taking that slowly create the change. And it's really in the fundamentals where greatness is made. Don't worry about all the, people out there saying you need, all these, vitamins or, different things. It's in the fundamentals where greatness lives, and it's not, this isn't, your bike is good enough. Don't worry about the bike. Your bike is fine. Most, I don't know people who do Leadville and go, well, I could have gone under 12 hours if I had a better bike. It's just, your bike is fine,
Your bike is fine.
and,
Yeah.
and same thing with the tires, and you can get caught up and all stuck on all this stuff, or what in practice, make sure that you've got, a game plan when you go into the weekend, okay, what am I doing? What am I eating the night before? What am I eating 2 nights before? And then, when do you wake up? What are you going to eat when you wake up? And what I like to do is create a routine and just have that athlete follow the routine. And we practice that routine in training. We practice it. We have race days, we have practice race days, and it's like, hey, if we're going to eat, we're going to wake up like we're going to do it on race day. We're going to eat the night before what we're going to plan to eat the night before the race. We're going to do it in training. We're going to do the same thing for breakfast that we're going to eat at breakfast, and when do you go to the start, all these type of things. And so you can just follow your routine and just break it down and not be worried about, well, what should I do? Or I heard so-and-so is eating this for breakfast. I should eat this. Maybe I should try that. You shouldn't be trying anything new on race day. It should be the same old thing that you do when you've practiced it.
Right. You're familiar with you're just familiar with it. It's natural.
Exactly.
It's just going to happen. And
Exactly.
I want to make another comment about something that a saying that you said to me as I am gaining fitness and feeling stronger and I think one of my comments to you was, I can go harder. I can go longer. I can do more than you're prescribing me to do. And you said to me, don't overcook the sauce. And that just stuck with me. And it's, I've shared that with a lot of my friends, fellow racers, and talked about when we're talking about training and they just want to go get after it. And it's, 3 weeks before the race or, 4 weeks before the race. And it's like, man, if you're on a plan, stick with the plan. He's got a trajectory for you that is, he's planned out. Stick with it. Don't overcook the sauce. And that's something that just stuck with me. And I, when it's weekend time and, there's 1,000 more feet of vert to gain, it's like, well, maybe not. Let's not make that turn. Let's just adapt, let the body adapt. Don't get after it. Just, do what you're told. Take it easy on your longer rides. And so hopefully that term, don't overcook the sauce, would stick with you new racers, and you're going to adapt better. You're going to be a better racer.
Absolutely. We all want to compare ourselves to others, and we all see, oh, this guy, he's going out and hitting it really hard. And I heard he did this ride and he killed everybody, or she killed, and it's like, that may be good for that person. What's good for you? We need to be focused on you, and so, and for most people, and elite athletes, it's the majority of the riding is easy to moderate. They go really, really hard sometimes, but most of the riding is easy, moderate, but it's consistency. It's boom, 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 boom. Now, for some, like a time crunch athlete, a little more challenging. You have more things going on in your life. I mean, it's really easy for a pro who wakes up and they've got, 7, 8 hours to train. They come back and they can, they can take a nap, a 2-hour nap, get up, make their dinner, they've got it easy. For the time crunch athlete, you really have a lot more challenges. And so, so there's a couple days, 1 or 2 days during the week, you want to go really hard. The other days, it's just, easy. And don't fall into the trap of doing what others are doing, and hey, there's 8 of us going on this great ride, everything. And it's just going to turn into, a kill fest out there. That's not going to serve you. So do what's good for you. And realize on your long days should be easy, moderate riding. You can throw, when I say that, look, you come to a headwind going uphill, you may have to push it to get up the hill. That's not a problem, but it's just really, if you're going out there, and you should feel like there should be no one workout that you do that you are just cooked. You come in and you're shot. You're just shot. Because chances are you're not going to adapt fully from that workout. to get in, let's say it's a really long, super hard ride, chances are you're not going to get in enough carbohydrate quick enough to replenish everything you burned out there, So some of that adaptation is going to be impaired because of carbohydrate replenishment. Um, it's like these small incremental steps, one thing after another. And you should feel, you know, intervals at times are hard, but they should never bury you. You should never get off the bike and feel like I am just totally fucked, or I did 6 hours and all I did was I'm done. You should, you get off the bike and it's like, yeah, I'm glad I'm off the bike, but you're not like wrestling in the refrigerator and you're just, it's just like you have to fuel yourself when you're out there for your activity. You shouldn't bury yourself. For any one ride should never bury you. It should just be one step after another, after another, after another. And then that way you can get in over a macro period of training. You can look at it and go, wow, I rode 6 days a week. There was no one day that I needed 3 days to recover from. I see people that do that and they don't, they're at, they adapt. It's not there because they've lost it, too much of it, by just giving it all up, because they're for 3 or 4 days, they're just, they're buried from the workout.
Right. I remember, I think one of the first conversations you and I had, we were talking about duration and rides and that sort of thing. And your comment to me was, I would rather have you do 4 1-hour rides than 1 4-hour ride.
Could be, yeah. Could be.
Could be.
I mean,
Which
I
makes
don't,
sense.
I don't remember it, but you would be surprised how, elite athletes for themselves, how they're riding much easier than you think they are. Now there's some training rides, there's some workouts they do that are, they're intense workouts, but, and there's no way around that, but not all the time. And what I see, the biggest mistake that I see with most people is they just go hard all the time.
Hard all the time. Yeah. And and you're not able to, your body's not able to adapt with that approach.
Well, it's adapted to a certain level, but you now lose. There's fundamental principles that really govern training, and so if you're going, kind of hard all the time, there's no one overload of a system that, you've done it, but you're not going any harder. So you plateau, you start to lose specificity. You start to lose, there's no progression into the training. These are all principles that govern training, and so you start to lose these. And that's why I say, any particular, there's all kinds of different, I can't even keep up with them all, like the different names and everything. And as long as they follow the fundamental principles of training, you're good, Overload, recovery, progression, specificity. These are all things, frequency. These are all, that govern. And so that if you start cutting those out, there's going to be a failure point. And so it actually becomes pretty simple when you can look at it and look at the training and go, what are the, 8 fundamental principles that are governing training? Are these principles, can I apply this to these workouts? And if you can answer yes, chances are you're on a pretty good training plan.
Right. So
especially over more of a macro view, more of a 4, 6, 8 week sort of period.
So from when you get your confirmation email in January to August 10th, 12th, whatever it falls on that year. Plenty of time to prepare yourself for the race, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Plenty of time. So I have a couple friends who in Michigan, newbie mountain bikers, decided they're going to throw their name in the hat, and they got in, both of them, husband and wife.
Nice.
Their numbers, their FTP was 125 and 128. And Matt Freeman, one of your coaches, he said, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. We got a long road. We got a steep climb. But he is going to, inch them up, and they're training 5 or 6 days a week, and they're going to stick to the plan. So it's going to be really interesting. I'm going to circle back with them around about a monthly basis, and kind of track them and see how they're progressing. And hopefully, we can get another field test. When they do their next field test, we'll get some more numbers and just see what their progression is to share with the viewers, to let them know that, if you live in flatland at sea level and you're just starting out and you did get in, there's, you can do it. You can do it.
Absolutely.
It's all about the program, right? It's all about the plan, the program, the coaching. So if you're starting out and you don't know what to do, the first thing you should do, get a coach. And
Coach
here's the perfect
is
coach.
helpful. What's that?
I said, and here's the perfect coach.
Well,
It's, CTS,
yeah. Thank you. There's, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but there's a lot of good coaches. We've got, there's many, but most people should be able to finish, unless there's some, if they're already an active cyclist and they start early, they should be able to finish Leadville, in under 12 hours and get their buckle. There, sometimes people, it takes a year or two, to get through it, and you start to go, and you go, I should have done that, and you start to see where those errors are. And, it's a big day out there. And
a lot has to align on race day.
a
Whether
lot
it's
has to
weather or
align.
gear or food or, sun or rain or snow. I mean, a lot has to align that day.
Yes. Yes.
And if you're a 12-hour bubble person, those things can affect you a lot more than if you're a 9-hour bubble person.
Very much so. Very much so.
You just have to be prepared. So
yeah, there's a lot, they're depending upon, like a 9-hour bubble person, they're not bringing a hydration pack, because they've, they're moving quick enough that between the aid stations, on the way out and coming back in, but if you're a 12-hour, you're going to need a hydration pack out there,
right,
and
need more
so,
volume
yeah,
between stops.
yeah, you're gonna, you're going to be burning a lot more calories than somebody if you're out there for 12 hours than somebody who's out there for 9 hours, even though you're going, the 9-hour guy is going, a lot faster or more intense, even, within themselves. But, one thing we know is that, by and large, the longer you're out there, the more, if somebody's burning 700 calories an hour and they're out there for 9 hours, and somebody who's taking their time, just, add it up and they're burning 500 calories, but they're out there for 12 hours.
Right.
They
got to eat a lot.
They got to eat a lot, and they got to drink a lot, and you got to start off with the full tank, and you got to stay on it, but one of the things is to make sure you're doing it in training, making sure that it's every 10 minutes, just a little bit, always putting something every 10 minutes. A lot of people set their, their devices to beep, to remind them. That's a good thing. It's like, and if you look, hey, I need to make sure I'm taking in 400 calories an hour. That's quite a bit. And so what does that look like? How many bars is that? Is that a bar and a pack of chews or something like that? and then to be able to count it and go, look, by the time I get to the first aid station, I should be going through 3 bars and, 2 packs of gels. And if you show up and you've got, there's, you got 2 bars and a pack of gels, well, you're already behind
Right.
and you're not going to catch up because
Right.
taking in that much food that quickly, that additional food to catch up is going to create, a stomach problem. So that's
Right.
something to think about. That's another reason you have to eat early and eat often. Drink early and drink often. When you eat, follow up with drinking, you know?
And what do you, as far as eating is concerned, are you more of a processed food person or a real food person?
I'm a little bit of a combination of both, somebody who's going to be out there longer in the day, a 12-hour kind of bubble person. Chances are, they're going to be burning fat and carbohydrate for the course of their event versus more of an elite cyclist that's out there and doing 7 hours or eight, even 8 hours. They're going to be burning primarily carbohydrate as their fuel out there. So they're going to be taking in more functional foods like gels and chews and things like that. But they're out there a lot shorter amount of time.
Right.
If you're out there 7 hours versus somebody who's out there 12 hours, it's very different. So the person who's out there 12 hours can't afford to eat more kind of regular food, um, but also making sure that they're getting enough carbohydrate, straight carbohydrate as well in there. But, taking in something like uh, a little panini with little sandwich with peanut butter and some honey and some salt. Sprinkle some salt on it because chances are a lot of times in Leadville it can be dry and warm as well, and that salt helps eliminate some of the cramping. So sprinkling a little of that kind of sweet saltiness is a good thing. And if we're out there, that that peanut butter and honey and salt, because we're out there longer, we're probably going to be burning. We're riding at a slightly lower intensity level, so you'll be burning fat and carbohydrate. So you can afford to take in more substances like a peanut butter jelly or peanut butter honey type of sandwich, along with bars, gels, and you have to practice this in training and eat like you do in the race in training.
Right. I went to the Fast Lab and Kathy Zawadski.
Yes.
Remember her?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
great. Super nice lady. Well,
yeah,
we did my VO2 testing with the lactate ear prick.
yeah.
And when I got my graph, it was just so interesting. I mean, for me, it was the first time that I did that kind of a test, that level of a test. And when I got the information back, I watched my graph go from starting out, burning fat. And then there was a point where I quit burning fat and I started to burn carbs. And for me, that was 138 heart rate. So to hear you speak about the 12-hour bubble people are probably going to be burning a mixture of carbs and fat, for me, all of a sudden it comes clear because it's like, okay, you're probably just getting through. You know what I mean? You are not redlining. You're not, the elite athlete. You are not, so your body's burning 2 different types of fuel. So to eat 2 different types of fuel sounds like that is, a very important thing to do if you're on the longer day. If you're a longer day racer, that's good advice.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay,
For sure.
super. Well, I think that's a great point for some of these new people to know that it's not just, if you're a 12-hour person, it probably isn't just gels all day long.
Oh,
You're going to
Can
need
be
some
tough.
different type of fuel.
Yeah. One gel is about 90 calories. I mean, depending upon the manufacturer, but how many gels you'd have to eat for being out there for 12 hours. That's a lot,
It just makes my
and your
stomach hurt
stomach
thinking
and
about
your,
it.
your stomach would have real trouble managing that amount of glucose that you're taking in. You'd also have to take in an awful lot of water. Um, I would venture to say the vast majority of people couldn't do that. They would after a few hours, they would start to feel their stomachs start to tie up. It would just
Wow.
be
Yeah.
far too much glucose.
I think Matt gave me some kind of a stat that it was like out of the whatever percentage of people don't finish, I think it was 70% of them, it's GI issues.
Yeah.
Some are mechanicals, whatever, but most of the people that don't finish are GI issues.
Yeah.
That really surprised me, but I
Yeah.
get it. If you're eating the wrong thing or you're not eating enough, then you try and cram it in. Sounds like that's where that's gonna start the ball rolling in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Most people start too late. I mean, it's like I said, you got to start in the first 10 minutes. You just got to a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And you have to figure out, how are you going to access this?
Right.
In the first 10 minutes, it's chaotic. There's people all over the place, and,
That's not easy.
20 minutes, it's chaotic. The first hour and a half is chaotic, So how are you going to access that? So you have to think about that, where's it going to be on your body? So you can, is it going to be open? What are you going to, so, keep that in mind.
Right. Because the first 20 minutes, I mean, you're just downhill,
Yep.
flying,
Yep.
freezing, your
Yep.
hands are almost numb. It's hard to navigate and pull off a gel pack, top or whatever it is, open your bar or something. And then you're on the St. Keven climb. Now it's just chaos going uphill. You're crawling and
Yeah.
trying to just not be a victim of
Yeah.
something on that climb. So yeah, you're probably 45 minutes to an hour before you can easily grab something, to eat. So you have to figure that out, and make your plan so that you can be eating and keeping the tank topped off before you start to go into a deficit.
Yeah.
So love it. I mean, this is just, I don't know. I think first timers, man, this is priceless information for you guys. Priceless. I hope you're listening.
One thing I would also say is you get there, it's cold. You're waiting and it's chilly, it's cold,
Sucks.
and um, but once you start going, you're all jacked up and you get warm really quick. You don't want to stop and take stuff off, So as you're there, think about if your family can be at the corral, if they can, have sweatshirts or jackets or things like that that they can drape over you when you're in the corral, I know people would sometimes go to like uh, the thrift store and
The
buy,
Goodwill, yeah.
yeah, and buy sweatshirts and things like that, and then 2 minutes to go, they'd take them off and just kind of leave them there and on the side, but it's breaking down that day and thinking about all those little things, that are sort of the functional aspects to the race. There's all the training, all the nutrition, but those functional aspects, thinking about your aid stations, practicing your aid station stops with your support crew, and also what you're going to eat and what you're going to be drinking, and each aid station, you may want to eat and drink a little differently, but also realize that, hey, it's like the famous thing, Mike Tyson said is, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and it's sort of like same thing in a race, everybody's got a plan until the gun goes off, and then who knows what happens, all of a sudden it starts raining, or you crash on, coming down, or and you get back up and you actually feel pretty good, And so it's like you have to be able to adapt too, and can't be too operational that it's like, oh, that threw off the plan. It's just a plan. It's going to change.
Gonna
And
change. Well, yeah,
you better be able to adapt to it, because you know what? The world's full of people who had plans and the plan went wrong, and that's their reason for quitting.
ugh,
Doesn't work that way, you know? Doesn't work that way. You got to,
not gonna fly with
it's
Ken.
all about, it's like, I know guys who've done Leadville. They didn't even know it, but they had COVID when they did Leadville and they still finished.
Who was that? I don't know if you know. I had it 2 years later. 2 out of 3 years I had COVID and raced.
Is that right? Wow.
Unbelievable.
That's
Just
crazy.
it's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
That sucked. But you're right. You've got to adapt. And
Yeah.
something that I tell, like I do core strategy coaching. I don't touch the fitness side of it. All I do is prepare them for the day.
Yeah.
What to expect, what to wear, the gearing, that sort of thing. And I am very adamant about, you have to go into the day with, I don't care what happens. I am going to get through it. No matter what. It is not, oh my goodness, this is going to set me back. It's like, whatever, fix it, move forward. I mean, your head has got to be right for, it does not matter, right? It just does not matter. I am going to do whatever I have to, and I'm going to keep moving, and I'm going to cross that finish line. And if, that's part of that, if your plan goes south, oh, well,
It
we're
is going
just,
to go south.
we're
It
just
is
going to
going to
keep
go
going.
south.
It's
And
going to go
it's just,
south, and we're just going to keep on going.
yeah.
So,
By and
man,
large,
I thank you. Love the information.
yeah.
So can you touch a little bit on your personal race day? Your first, did you have a good day? I mean, I know you told us that you were a little overweight and had some other, commitments, and you didn't train as much as you wanted to, still did a 9:18. Holy cow. I mean, there's a million
Yeah,
people who
I
would
think,
love to get that.
yeah, the first year I did it, I wasn't as prepared as I should have been, and just I
Wow.
should have spent more time on the mountain bike. I I I just I didn't really know what I was doing. I mean, I was a good cyclist, obviously, but I had never done 100-mile mountain bike race, and I had done just a few mountain bike races before. Um, and so I should have spent more time on my mountain bike. That's one thing that definitely, I could have done better if I spent more time on the mountain bike going into it. By and large, I mean, I'm fortunate because, I mean, this is my job, I mean, this is what I did, as a professional cyclist, as a professional coach. And so I was able to dial in pretty easily. And it's like, Mike, you're a carpenter, and you can walk in and look at a house and, look at, you know, kind of what, if you're gonna they want to put in a new kitchen, you can size things up pretty quick. And same
Sure.
thing for me. um, you know Back then I was in my uh, late
50s.
40s, early 50s. Now, um, I don't think I don't have a desire to do Leadville now, but um,
Oh,
64 is not my gig right now. But I'm going to do some other things. Uh, I probably, um, may go back and do Trans Andes down in Chile, maybe some other events. And I'm pretty much retired now, so I ride my bike a lot, which is nice, and I'm actually ride significantly more than I had been doing. So I was really fortunate. So I don't think there's anything that you know, besides from that first time, my nutrition was pretty good. In all the events, my nutrition has been pretty good. And mainly just, that's what I did with athletes was, part of the thing of a coach is developing a nutrition plan and knowing very specifically using power meters and knowing, really, not guessing on how many calories an athlete's going to burn in an hour going at this intensity level, so it was pretty easy to put together a nutrition plan around that. I think, a couple times I probably, probably should have done some longer days. I just found it really hard working that when I was working and I had kids, but, fairly young kids, getting out and doing anything longer than a 5-hour day, it was like, I probably should have put in a couple longer days than that, but anything longer than 5 hours, it was just hard. It was hard to be away from the family and just those commitments, but
Sure.
I wasn't a pro. I was just a fat old coach just out there having a good time.
So you touched on power meter. Would your recommendation for the newbies is a power meter is it a gotta have for them?
I wouldn't say it's a gotta have. You can do it without a power meter. There are plenty of people that were going plenty fast at Leadville without power meters, in training. But if you're going to work with a coach, they kind of go hand in hand. It's just it's really hard to. It's just not as. You can still work with the coach without a power meter for sure and be effective. Yeah, but it makes it quantifies your efforts. Clearly whether you're starting to see some of those improvements, especially if you're doing, let's say one interval session a week. You can start to see from, as you scroll in on those intervals and highlight them, you can start to see, well, is my, power going up from this interval session to the one 2 weeks later? Am I seeing, a gain, and you should, you should expect to see some of that. So a power meter is really important if you're working with a coach. You don't have to have a power meter to work with a coach, but it helps.
Sure. No, it doesn't lie, right? Because I mean, I remember some days I wouldn't feel good, but I'd be looking at my Garmin, and it'd be like I'm where I need to be, even though I didn't in my head, or I didn't feel like I was going to be able to hit those numbers. And there were also days where I thought I was doing fine, but then I'd look down and be like, man, you're behind. You need to, you need to get going. So the power meter doesn't lie. It tells you right where you at for that day, for that moment, for sure. So I love mine.
Yeah. It does some good stuff. There's I've been in the sport a long time and well before power meters. And when I was an athlete, there weren't. And, I remember a coach, hey, today we're going to work on our, endurance, climbing endurance. And he'd have us do these repeats up and down this hill. And he's like, don't go, 15 minutes, 20 minutes long. And don't go as hard as you can. Go at a sustainable pace for 20 minutes and slightly slower than that. And each one should be like that, and so what were we working on? We were working on lactate threshold, we didn't have a way to kind of quantify it, but we looked at, we'd use our stopwatches or, cycle computers. And we'd also look at the amount of distance that you cover in those 20 minutes, and pretty easy to see whether, how you're doing. Same thing. It was like, hey, now we're going to work on your ability to bridge a gap, and bridge up. And you need that 3-minute power as hard as you can go. You see that hill? It's about 3 minutes to the top. I want you to do, 5 efforts as hard as you can go up that hill. we're working on VO2 max, so you can train fine without a power meter. Eddie Merckx was a damn good cyclist, and there was no power meter he was using in training, So you can train fine without a power meter. Now, generally, if you're working with a coach, especially if you're new at this sport, it helps move things along much quicker.
Right. Who you dropped that name, but the internet was slow, so I didn't catch it.
Eddie Merckx,
Oh, okay.
best cyclist who ever walked this planet.
Wow. Well, there's some
He's old
OG
now.
info right there, man.
Yeah, best cyclist that ever walked this planet, Eddie Merckx. I don't think anybody will. Well, there's probably arguments about that, but I can rattle off all his victories, but he was pre-power meters,
Right.
and there's plenty, but it speeds things. It kind of speeds things along, and it allows you. It's like science is great, and your training should be founded and grounded in solid sports science. But that's not what wins races. What wins races is the athlete and what's inside them and what they're
Right.
able to do with it. That's what wins races at the highest level now. And this sport has gotten more and more scientific, but it still comes down to, what's inside the athlete.
Grit, guts, and determination. Right.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go, man. What a way to
I've
wrap
heard
this
that
up,
one before.
huh? What a way to wrap this
You're
up.
gonna
Perfect.
get a cease and desist order from our friend Ken Klober there in Leadville.
Oh, well, I hope he gives me his blessing. I'm doing this because I love it. I love those guys. From my story, I'm doing this because I had the heart attack on the course and the stents, and Leadville saved my life. So, I'm just doing this because I love it, and I hope everybody's okay with it.
Absolutely.
We'll find out soon enough, won't we? Because Ken has no problem letting everybody know how he feels. He's an awesome guy. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, Chris. It was awesome information. I can't thank you enough. It was priceless. All the things that you touched on I'm sure they're gonna help first time buckle chasers, set the compass and get a plan and, implement the things that we talked about, and just, really do appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Thank you again.
Well, I wish everybody the best of luck, and you too, Mike, and good seeing you.
You too. All right.
Okay.
Well, Mike Iddings signing off, the YouTube channel Get My Buckle. We'll see you next week. Thanks.